Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Do you know that this is our fifth episode?
Of this series?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
I didn't know. I hadn't been keeping track, so
It's the
that's cool.
third season and the fifth
Yep, that's a lot of conversations.
of raw conversations.
Raw conversations. You were just reminding me what RAW stands for.
Yeah, resilient, authentic wisdom.
Hmm.
So what does that really look like?
Well, it's interesting because I'm hearing those words thrown around a lot lately. Um, Resilient because the perception that the times in which we live are exceptionally challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Authentic because with the rise of AI, we wonder if things are real.
Yeah.
And wisdom because knowledge got us into this mess. Knowledge without wisdom. And I think people are realizing that they need more than just, I mean, if you can get the facts off of your phone, then the missing component is wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Very
So
interesting.
yeah, definitely very timely words.
Mm.
I'm really fascinated right now by had a conversation with a friend over the weekend, and this person was under a lot of stress, is dealing with an excessive amount of stress that they're not, I don't think I judge that they're not processing completely. It's they threw a phone across the room. When you get to the place where you throw something that you're trying to fix across the room, you're at the edge of your resilience. Like you're pushing the boundaries of resilience.
Mm.
And so in the conversation, we were talking about, well, what do you need to manage stress? Like what do you and the person listed work, changes, externals. My house is messy. But I can't do anything about it because the person with whom I live is putting piles around, and they're not making dinner for us anymore. And um, I have to deal with all these tech companies or all these helplines because of the work that I do, and nobody's doing their job. And it was like, it was so stunning. It was like everything I asked what they could do to be resilient within the pressures that were being placed on them.
Mm.
And their whole list was these things need to be fixed. These externals need to be fixed. Then I won't be stressed anymore. And it's like, I didn't ask you that. I asked you, what do you do to build your resilience no matter what? There's always going to be stressors. And the person was like, no, there's not like this. And I'm like, well, maybe not like this, but there's always stressors. So where is the seat? It was so clear to me in that moment. Like, where is the seat of your resilience? Because it is not in control. Control doesn't, if your resilience is dependent on control, good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
if your
External.
resilience is based on other people giving you things that'll make you feel less stressed, good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even when we started to delve into it, the person said, "Well, I exercise a lot, and that helps." And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean that's good. That's still action. That's still a to-do list."
Yeah.
And I watched a video over the weekend. They were talking about recovery in building muscle, like in
Mm-hmm.
fitness. And they said that the best way to build a recovery program is what you take away. This was Dr. Mike Israetel, and I really enjoy his stuff. Like it's what you take away, not what you add, that allows you to truly rest. And I thought, isn't that an interesting concept? That practices of resilience, like meditation, right? Meditation is about putting things down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even prayer is about handing things off, right? It's like, here, I'm
Mhm.
going to tell you what's on my mind, what's weighing me down. Um,
Surrender.
Practices like that, right, are about putting things down, turning things off. And we live in a consumer society that says, here's a new relaxation app, here's a new
Mhm.
uh, power tool that allows you to massage your muscles. Here's a new head thing that allows you to get alpha waves in your whatever it is. It's like here's a new thing to add. Pay us, and we will get you there. My son was objecting this weekend because there was a famous person who was shilling for an app, a prayer app, and he was just laughing, and he's like, it's medieval indulgences to
Mm.
expect people to pray to pay so that they can pray, like
Yeah.
to set up this expectation that if you want to do it properly, you're going to have to buy something
Mm.
and utilize something. So
Hmm.
this idea of well, actually, since we're in a religious frame, there's a saying attributed to Christ that says, the yoke is heavy, but the burden is light. Like, come to me and we'll put everything that you don't need down. Like, that's in ancient scripture, right? Ancient wisdom. And I'm sure if you looked at the writings of other ancient wisdom groups, you'd probably find multiple examples of put it down. Just let it put it down.
Yeah.
So that's
Mm.
maybe that's going to be my mantra this week. What can I put down? What can I um yeah, what can I reduce to be,
Mm.
what could turn off or be set aside, and it doesn't mean if you put it down you don't pick it up later. That's the thing about meditation, right? You go from
Mhm.
your meditative practice back to thinking like you think, but
Yes.
with a little more insight because you had the meditative practice. It's not that you put down your worries and you never pick them back up again, or you put down your responsibilities or the challenges you're facing. Um, you and I had watched a video, and in the video they were talking about um, the misunderstanding that adversity is bad when adversity is just opportunity.
Hmm.
Also
Yeah.
part of
And
that.
even an obstacle. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you figure out how to get around it, you figured something out. If you work to get around it, you get stronger.
Hmm.
If you come to understand you can't get around it and you find yourself in acceptance, not resignation,
Yeah.
it makes you stronger too.
Yeah. That's where I'm at in acceptance to what I'm
Yeah,
so right now. Yeah.
yeah,
And that in itself is me going internally,
hmm,
right?
right.
And that's the resilience of it. I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to come out. I'm going to emerge from that
Yeah,
in a new version, a new way of being.
yeah. I circumstances got in the way this weekend and I didn't end up working out for the last 3 days. Going doing weights. And my plan was to take Friday off and then to do weights over the weekend. And it didn't happen because of some extenuating circumstances and a little bit of procrastination. And so I just got to the end of the weekend and declared it a longer break and was okay with it, which is a huge difference about how, that's growth, because in the past I would have gotten really upset with myself. But
Mm.
the delicate art of acceptance,
Mm.
it's harder than you think to move from resignation. At least has some indignation in it and some, I
Yeah.
don't know, some juicy. Well, if you're in resignation, you're resigned, it means that it's outside of your control. Everything's outside of your control. Well, there's a certain freedom in that. It feels horrible and wonderful at the same time to
It
say, well,
does.
it was nothing I
Because
could have done.
yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt. It's just the
Yeah,
word
go for it.
fighter, the word being a fighter. I'm a, like I fight for things,
Hmm.
you know? And um I'm in acceptance
Yeah,
as well. I'm still taking the action
right.
steps of what I need to take, but I'm also in the acceptance to what is so,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And the resilience is being the warrior
Yeah.
and taking those action steps.
The
And
biggest
not being
difference
the
between,
warrior and taking the action steps on what is possible.
yeah.
But I'm still
And
in
that's the big
acceptance.
difference between resignation and acceptance, because in resignation, there is no action you can take. In
Right.
acceptance, it opens up possibilities for action, to your point. Like,
Mm.
so I'm accepting that this is not what I
Yeah.
thought it was, or I can't,
Yeah. And
there's
I
no
have to
changing
feel it.
this.
I have to
So,
feel it. I may not agree or approve,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
I have to
right.
feel it to the fullest
Yeah,
to be able to shift.
yeah. I may not
Um,
agree or approve is an important phrase.
and when I'm not accepting, I'm in anxiety around
Yeah.
around it. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that
and
makes a lot of
this is where the A comes in for raw, right? So R is for resilience, A is being authentic.
sense.
And
Hmm.
excuse me, I got to be authentic about it.
Yep.
I got to be real about it.
Yeah.
Like I'm scared. I have fears.
Yeah.
I'm hurting, right?
Yeah.
I'm
And
sad.
disappointment, sadness. Yeah.
Disappointments,
Yeah.
right? Be authentic. Feel it to the fullest.
Feel
And
it
I
to where
may
you
have
need
to
to. Yeah.
exclude myself from the world and just go inside,
Yeah.
be that way. Not just it's not like meditation or whatever, but it's just even just taking a day and doing nothing, and being okay with that, bringing in the acceptance,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was, like me taking the break. It was semi-accidental, but I decided to accept it. And I was back at the gym this morning. I'm back. Nothing happened. As a matter of fact, I broke through a weight loss plateau because I was resting, I think. Um, so that's a physical biochemical interaction that I'm engaged in, losing weight and gaining muscle.
Thanks.
But it extends to the philosophical, extends to the less tangible of, I mean, there's that thing that happens and people know it and they still forget. The couple that's trying to have a baby and they give up and then they get pregnant. The person who's looking for their mate, their perfect person, and they give up and they find them. Like, we laugh about that, but there's something about the easing up
Mm-hmm.
that allows things to happen.
Yeah.
And that's part of acceptance is you're easing up on the
Yeah.
right things. You're not going inert and not doing what you can do,
Yeah.
but you're not continuing to push something that's immovable.
Mm. But you gotta back to being authentic, right?
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
you have to you know, feel the
Hmm.
feelings,
You
be
do.
with the thoughts. The thoughts can be very scary,
Yeah.
but just be with it so it could release.
Hear them. Yeah, hear them. Because then the next delicate art is the art of not living in the story.
Right.
So
Yeah.
feeling those emotions, hearing what you're thinking
Yeah.
comes with story. It comes with narrative.
Yeah.
I will always, this is what always happens, whatever the story is, right? And
Yes.
it's usually tied to bigger stories, longer stories, whatever.
Mm.
And that part's not true. That's not the true part. The true part is that you hear the story. The true part is that you feel the emotion, but the
Yeah.
story and the emotion aren't necessarily the true part.
No. And we make up stories.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My God, I do that.
I had an experience last week where I was at a presentation and I said something and the speaker bristled a little bit and said something to me that made me go, oh, she doesn't like that. She feels like she has to whatever. I don't know. I had a story. A story showed up. And
Mm.
the longer I watched, the more I realized, oh, my story collided with her story about who I am and a story about who I am and what I meant to her, control of the
Mhm.
room and what I don't know. And I still don't know, but it was so obvious after a point that neither of us had the truth. We both had our story.
Mm.
And it gave me room. Once I realized that, it gave me room to get curious about what else was true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Interestingly, the woman's Australian and she tends to cuss more than Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets self-conscious because she's cussed in front of a group of Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of people in there referenced their pastors or, so now she's thinking she's in a religious crowd. She wasn't, but she thought she was.
Yeah.
And so she's like, so I went up afterwards and I told her that I thought she was effing great, but I used the whole word. Um, and she lit up. She's like, thank you for that. Like she felt so bad about that. She thought she tripped a social wire. And she hadn't necessarily, not for me,
Mm-hmm.
maybe for somebody else in the room. So how do you hear other people's stories and start to rewrite them? Not because it's your responsibility to rewrite them, but you get to do the next piece of dialogue. So where's this story going to go? Um, what's the story you're creating together versus the story that you have in your head that's entrenched?
But how do you rewrite your own story?
Well, it was interesting because one of the things she was teaching on was NLP principles about the three primary fears of the fears that in the theory in NLP theory it's that from 0 to 7 you have
Okay,
had
so I'm
experiences.
just going to pause you for a moment because NLP is neuro linguistics programming,
Yes, it is.
and
Thank
I've
you.
done some training in that.
Yeah, yeah.
It can be quite interesting.
It is. There's a lot. They have a lot to say, and I've always
Yeah.
enjoyed like checking in with NLP concepts. And she was teaching on three basic fears: fear that you're not enough,
Mm.
fear that you're going to be abandoned, and fear that you don't belong. And
Yeah.
most of us form stories about those three basic core fears in our first 7 years of life.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unavoidable because as a relatively helpless human being from 0 to 7, we're scanning for that danger. Those three things are very dangerous. That you would be culled from the herd, that you wouldn't be. So it very primal experience, very visceral.
Mm.
And so she was talking about that, and it was also showing up because when she was worried about whether her language had broken social contract,
Mm.
that's fear number three. I don't belong, and
Mm.
it's so fascinating, and that was what I liked about her. She was doing her work. She
Mhm.
clearly someone who was doing her work, and so she was aware of what she wasn't aware of, and she was, like all the things. She wasn't
Mhm.
pretending authentic, right? She wasn't pretending she'd mastered this stuff. At one point,
Mhm.
she said, I speak about joy because I've had a hard time accessing it. Like it was
Mhm.
so good to hear that from the front of the room, right? Authentic. That's what authentic looks like. I'm working on this because this is a challenge for me. And here's what I've discovered, and you might be interested too, is so much better than here's what you need to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In a speaker, so or a
Yeah.
coach or anybody that's in a
Well,
position to teach you.
yes, and it's so important. I know, like, people do have a hard time being authentic,
Hmm.
right? But it's so important to learn how to be authentic with yourself.
To
I'm
learn how to do it, to have the courage to do it,
the
you have
courage
to
to
learn
do
the
it, like
courage to,
full self-expression.
yeah,
And it may not even make sense what you need to say, but you just need to say it.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
empty and meaningless,
yeah.
right? It can be. And it's just um it needs it needs to resurface
Hmm.
to transform.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And our fear is that, I mean, so much of, and it goes back to language again, because we've talked about the impact of language. We have so many emotions we've labeled as bad, as dangerous. I mean, when we say bad, we mean dangerous. Like if I feel this emotion, I'm going to do something socially unacceptable, or I'm going to hurt,
Mm,
or it's going to hurt so bad I won't be able to come back from it.
mm,
That's the courage piece, right? That the
mm.
emotion, the irony to me is when I commit to fully feeling an emotion, it's
Yeah.
always less intense than when I don't. But
Right. And
that's the
that's the
fear, right?
wisdom. That's the wisdom. That's where
Yeah,
the
there you
wisdom
go.
comes
Yeah,
from. Okay.
practice.
Yes.
Or practice.
Well, yes, because when you're in acceptance and you allow yourself to feel it, you're not going to explode as
Yeah, that you're
you're
afraid you.
wrong what you're doing, or
Hmm.
what you're saying. But if you
Yeah,
could bring in the acceptance,
yeah.
and that is the wisdom around it. So, from knowledge, like our
Hmm.
work, right, is like from knowledge to wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have the knowledge of anger management.
Yeah,
I laugh at that.
conflict resolution,
Conflict
conflict
resolution,
mediation.
all the knowledge, the tools and techniques, and how
Hmm.
to.
Yeah.
But what's missing is the feeling of it, of allowing.
Hmm.
And it's
Mm, that's
okay.
profound. Hmm.
It's okay.
You had said earlier that you were talking about the difference between going it alone and having support, right? And that's another thing. You don't have to let somebody in on what you're struggling with, but you can have when you have the courage to fully feel your emotions,
Yeah.
sometimes just having somebody sitting there with you, even if you don't tell them what's going on,
Yeah.
it increases your courage, right? You feel less singled out. It's less frightening. And
Yeah.
so I think sometimes we think we have to go. I mean, there's really good cases for going to a coach or working with a therapist, different things, different reasons, and having the conversation, sometimes a good friend. But it's also on the table to not share the mechanism, but share the experience with someone. Hey, can
Mhm.
you just sit with me? I need to think about something and I'm feeling very alone and exposed. And I don't really want to talk about it,
Yeah.
but would you just sit here? Like, when do we make that request? But that can be really powerful, really powerful. Limbic resonance, the presence
Mhm.
of another person. We're wired to feel vulnerable when we're alone. Now,
Mhm.
there's other reasons to be alone that are great,
Mhm.
but try that. Can you cultivate a relationship, a friendship with someone that allows them to sit there and not let their curiosity get the better of them and just be with you?
Yeah.
It's why in Judaism, they have a tradition
Mhm.
called sitting Shiva. Are you familiar with that? So
Mhm.
when someone has died, you go and you just sit in the house with the people who've lost the closest people to the deceased.
Mhm.
And if they laugh, you laugh, and if they cry, you cry, and if they're quiet, you're quiet, and if they're talking, you talk. You take
Mhm.
all of your cues from the bereaved,
Yeah.
and your job is just to be present in the room. I think that is some of the deepest wisdom ever.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything. You just need to be present. What a relief and what an exciting.
And that's from Judaism.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
They traditionally, if I am not Jewish, but I have I yeah. So I've looked into this a little bit. So if I'm making mistakes about this tradition, but my understanding is traditionally bodies were supposed to be buried very quickly. So a lot of our Western, I guess we're going to call it Western as opposed to Judaism, but the Christian traditions of waiting and having the funeral and the body and the
Mhm.
procession and whatever, there's no body, right? So the sitting Shiva is the grieving.
Mhm.
And they also do this thing called the Yahrzeit, which is the 1 year anniversary of the death of someone. You
Mhm.
celebrate that. The Kaddish prayers get said in the synagogue, and um, there's other things that happen. And that's when you don't put a lot of people don't put the headstone on the grave until that first Yahrzeit, until that first year. Again, I
Yeah.
may be getting some details wrong, but this is what I've learned, and I think it's beautiful. I think there's
As
some real
Christians do that too. They wait a year after. Put their
Voodoo, Orthodox.
Christianity, Christians. Yeah.
That's interesting. I've never
Yeah.
encountered that. I think, but
But where did you
it's
learn this
those,
Judaism?
I worked in a synagogue for a couple of years and then went back to school for design. And while I was in design school, there was a summer job at Jewish Family Services, and I was the only one who had a rabbi as a reference. So I got the summer job when I was in my second degree. And
Mhm.
um, learned so much. I learned so much. It was amazing. And you know, as the office manager, you're involved in the ebb and flow of the annual calendar and what the holidays are about and what people, you know, it was so cool. I learned so much. And we go back to that thing about wisdom, you know, that um, Julio Alaya, that you and I have both studied under, and other teachers in my life have said some version of right now the yearning is to go back and recapture lost ancient wisdom and to implement creativity to create things that
Yeah,
have never existed.
yeah,
And that yearning for ancient wisdom, it's paying attention
yeah,
to what other humans have figured out about how to face adversity, how to,
mm,
like, grief is a huge adversity for most people.
mm,
Um, what 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 can you learn? You know, what's the beauty that's out there,
mm,
or the hints or the techniques? And, you know, sitting Shiva, the idea of
mm,
being in your grief and being held by the community, but not with any expectation that you should be or do a
mm,
certain thing or act in a certain way. Just a container for your grief
mhm,
of support around the edges and people who will do what you ask in the moment for whatever phase of grief you feel like you're going through, whatever the need of the moment is.
mm,
You know, I always love in funerals. There's always, almost always, a moment where somebody in a eulogy or in a passing comment says something and everyone laughs.
mhm,
And there's such palpable bittersweetness in that moment of, oh
mhm,
yeah, that's what we lost, is this person.
yeah,
And I'm feeling teary and I don't even have a particular person in mind. It's such a potent human experience, right?
mhm,
But that's part of resilience too, is can you find the sweetness in the sour, in the bitter, in the hard, in the difficult, in the painful?
yeah,
Because it's almost always there. And
yes,
I think sometimes we get this message, if you feel it, there's something wrong with you. You're supposed to be angry, you're supposed to be sad, you're supposed to be whatever. And
yeah,
that's part of feeling it fully. It's never one thing.
mm,
They're emotions are compound, complex, amazing input,
mhm,
all the things. And that's part of acceptance too, you know, that you're going to have this experience. You're going to be courageous enough to feel it.
mm,
It's not going to, what did you say? You're not going to explode. I love that you said that. You're not going to explode. You're going to have an experience,
yeah,
you know?
sweet moment.
Hmm.
Um, we have 1 minute left.
Yeah. So tell me, what does your resilience need this week?
My resilience. Wow.
Yeah. What
What
does it
does it
need?
need? What does it need?
I don't know.
Mm.
What does it want? What does it want? What would help it? What would support your resilience this week?
Taking action.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Acknowledging the room that acceptance gives you,
Mm.
taking that action. I like that.
And be authentic and be in my integrity and the
Beautiful.
wisdom in that, the grace in
Beautiful.
we have to say goodbye until next week.
Me too. All right. Bye. I'll see you next week.
Okay. See you.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Jennifer.
Thank you. Bye.